You ever get that feeling, like that total gut punch
Yeah.
when grief just hits you? The world kind of tilts
Yeah.
and nothing feels the same, you know? Today we're diving deep into this thing we all go through, something people kind of dance around, grief.
Yeah, for sure. It's like we're told to get over it, stay strong, all that. But that stuff doesn't really get the real mess of it, how long it sticks with you.
Totally. It's like there's this whole timetable for healing, but that's so not how it goes.
Mhm.
Let's ditch the shoulds and the timelines and just get real about grief, you know?
That's where things get interesting because grief, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. It's like a kaleidoscope. Everyone's experience is totally unique to them and what they're going through.
I love that because it really shows how grief isn't like a straight line. You can't predict it.
Exactly. And I think one of the worst things we can do is try to just bury those feelings. When we try to bottle up grief, it just makes it stronger and last longer.
It's like trying to shove a beach ball underwater. It's going to pop back up eventually, probably even harder.
Hmm.
So, how do we really face grief head on? What helped you?
For me, it started with changing how I thought about it. I was treating grief like a problem to solve, something to get over with ASAP.
And that's what we're told, right? Don't dwell,
Oh, I don't
stay busy, think positive. But what happened when you challenged that?
It changed everything. Because once I stopped fighting grief, pushing it away, I could finally feel it all.
That sounds super tough, but also freeing in a way.
It was both, honestly. Some days the sadness felt like too much, like I was drowning. But then there were these moments of calm in all the chaos.
Did you find anything that helped you get through those intense feelings?
Journaling was huge for me, not like a gratitude journal or anything. I mean, really going deep, letting all the raw stuff just spill out.
I hear that a lot from people who've dealt with loss. It's like journaling makes a safe space to let go, to sort things out.
Absolutely. And for me, it was more than that. Over time, I saw these patterns in what I was writing. Themes would pop up, things would click, and all the chaos in my head started making sense.
So it wasn't just venting. It was helping you understand your grief on a deeper level.
Exactly. Plus, it helped me track how I was doing even when I felt like I was going backward. Looking back on what I wrote, I could see my perspective changing.
Wow. So your journal became like this record of you healing.
It did. And you know what else? It made me realize I wasn't the only one feeling this way. Reading what others went through, their honesty, it gave me comfort, like we were connected.
That brings up something so important, support systems. You mentioned how bad it is to isolate yourself, but how'd you reach out when you felt most alone?
Honestly, it was a moment of pure, I can't do this anymore. I was pushing everyone away, thinking I had to deal with it all myself. But then one day, it just got to be too much. I called a friend.
And what was that like, breaking through that wall you'd built?
It wasn't as hard as I thought. My friend just listened, no judgment, no cliches. They just let me be myself, as messed up as I felt.
That's so important. Just having someone truly listen could be the best thing. It reminds us we're not in this alone.
Exactly. And that one call helped me connect with others who cared about me. I started going to a grief support group, and man, that was so validating. Hearing everyone's stories, their struggles, it made me feel like my experience was normal.
It's amazing how sharing those vulnerable parts of ourselves brings us together. What other kinds of support did you find helpful?
Even just asking for help with everyday stuff made a huge difference. I didn't want to burden people, but then a friend offered to cook dinner once a week, and someone else offered to help with errands.
I love that. It reminds us that support doesn't have to be all deep and serious. Sometimes it's those everyday acts of kindness that help us through.
Totally. It freed up my energy to deal with the emotional stuff.
So we've talked about acknowledging grief, getting support, and journaling. But what about moving on? Is that even possible?
That's a great question. The way we talk about grief can be tricky. Moving on sounds like we're leaving something behind, erasing the past.
Like pretending the loss never happened or that the person we lost doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, and that's not possible, or even what we'd want. Everything we go through, good and bad, shapes who we are. Loss becomes part of our story.
So if moving on isn't the answer, what is? How do we weave loss into our lives and keep going?
I like to think of it as moving forward. It's knowing that the person we were before the loss might be different now.
Like we're on new ground now, changed by what we've been through. And we have to find our way in this new place.
That's a great way to put it. And in this new place, we might need to figure out who we are now, what we believe in, what gives our life meaning.
So it's not about forgetting or pretending the pain's gone. It's about finding a way to carry the lessons and the love with us as we build a new path.
Exactly. It's about making the loss part of who we are, letting it change us but not control us.
This is so insightful. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's dig more into this idea of moving forward, of rebuilding and finding meaning after a loss.
One of the hardest things about moving forward after loss is that feeling of being lost. It's like your compass is broken, and you're just wondering, who am I now? Where do I fit in?
It's like your whole identity is shaken up,
Huh?
and you're picking up the pieces, trying to figure out how they go back together.
Exactly. It can be so overwhelming to redefine yourself, but it's also a chance to really grow and discover new things about who you are.
Okay, so how do we even start? When it feels like the ground is gone, how do you rebuild a sense of self?
It starts with being gentle with yourself.
Right.
Give yourself space for the grief, the confusion, all of it. It's okay to not have everything figured out, to feel lost right now.
It's like giving yourself permission to wander for a bit, to explore without judging yourself or expecting too much.
I like that. Sometimes the most important discoveries come when we let ourselves get lost, when we step off the path and see what's out there.
So how do we navigate that? What are some things we can actually do to start putting together a new sense of self?
One powerful thing is to go back to your values, those core beliefs that guide you. Loss can shake those up and make you question what's truly important.
It's like taking those values and looking at them from a new angle, seeing which ones still feel right and which ones might need to change.
Right. And as you get clearer on your values, you can start making choices that match them. Choices that build a life that feels true to who you are.
You mentioned meaning making before. Can you say more about that? How do we find meaning when the world feels different?
It's about finding purpose and meaning in what we go through, even the painful stuff. Realizing that loss doesn't have to be the end, it can be a new beginning.
So instead of why me, we start asking what now?
Exactly. You shift from the pain of what's gone to the possibilities of what can be.
And those possibilities are different for everyone.
Right.
There's no one way to find meaning after loss.
Of course not. For some, it might be connecting with others, making their relationship stronger, or giving back to their community.
It could be finding purpose in their work, going after a passion they put aside, or using their experience to help others going through the same thing.
Exactly. For others, it might be about getting back in touch with nature, exploring their spiritual side, or simply enjoying the simple things again.
So it's about being curious, trying new things, and seeing what brings back that sense of purpose, passion, or connection.
You got it. And sometimes you find meaning in the most unexpected places.
Okay, I love that. Can you give an example of how someone might find new meaning in their life after a big loss?
Sure, I once worked with a woman who lost her husband very suddenly. She was heartbroken, completely lost. For months, she couldn't imagine life without him. But then, one day, she stumbled upon a community garden while she was out walking. She started volunteering there, taking care of the plants, talking to the other gardeners. Slowly, she started to feel a sense of purpose again, even joy. The garden became her safe space, a place where she could remember her husband while nurturing new life.
That's such a beautiful story. It reminds us that even with deep sadness, there's still space for beauty, connection, and growth.
And those little seeds of hope, they often pop up in the most surprising places.
So we've talked about checking in with our values, finding new meaning, and staying open to unexpected things. But what about when we're stuck? When the grief feels like too much and we can't see a way out?
Those feelings are totally normal. Grief comes and goes, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming. What matters is to acknowledge those moments, to let yourself feel the pain without fighting it.
So we don't try to battle those waves of grief. We learn to ride them out, knowing they'll pass eventually.
Right. And remembering that we don't have to do it alone. Reaching out for support during those times can be so important. Talking to a therapist, joining a group, or even just talking to a friend can help you feel less alone.
It's about finding those safe places where you can be honest about how you feel, where you can express your pain and get the comfort and support you need.
And sometimes those safe spaces are found in nature, in doing something creative, or even just taking care of yourself.
You mentioned self-care earlier. What are some small, everyday things we can do to be kind to ourselves during times of grief?
Sometimes the best self-care is the simplest stuff. Taking a few deep breaths, listening to music, or spending a few minutes outside can really calm you down.
It's about being present in your body, noticing how you feel, and giving yourself a break from all the emotional stuff.
Exactly. And it's also about taking care of your body with healthy food, getting enough sleep, and moving your body in ways that feel good. When you're grieving, it's easy to forget about those things, but taking care of yourself physically can really help you emotionally.
So self-care isn't selfish, it's necessary. It's about recharging so we can face the challenges of grief with more strength and clarity.
And remember, self-care is different for everyone. There's no right or wrong way. It's about finding what brings you comfort and peace.
Something we don't talk about enough with grief is humor. It might sound odd, but can you talk about how humor can help us cope with loss?
Humor can be surprisingly powerful. It's not about making light of the situation or disrespecting what you've lost. It's about finding moments of lightness in the darkness. Laughter can be a release, a way to ease the tension and remember that even when things are sad, there's still room for joy.
It's like those moments when the sun breaks through the clouds on a stormy day.
Mm.
They don't make the storm go away, but they do bring a bit of brightness.
That's a great way to put it. And sometimes those funny moments come from the most unexpected places. A funny memory, a silly mistake, or just sharing something absurd with a friend.
Okay, let's talk more about the practical stuff. You mentioned setting small goals and new routines. Can you explain how those can help us rebuild after loss?
When you're grieving, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by everything. Setting small, doable goals can help you feel more in control. It's about breaking down the huge task of moving forward into smaller steps.
So instead of looking at the whole picture, which can be scary, we focus on the small, everyday things we can do to move forward.
Exactly. And those things don't have to be big or impressive. It might be making your bed, taking a short walk, cooking a healthy meal, or calling a friend.
It's about creating a little order in the chaos, getting things moving one step at a time.
And those small steps add up over time. As you start feeling more capable, you might feel brave enough to try bigger things, like taking a class, volunteering, or traveling.
It's like building a bridge brick by brick to where you want to be.
And it's okay if you stumble along the way. Grief isn't a race, there's no finish line. You'll have setbacks, days when you feel like you're going backward.
But the important thing is to keep going, even if it's just a small step in the right direction.
Right. And celebrate those small wins. Acknowledging your progress, even the little things, can keep you going and help you believe in your ability to heal and grow.
This has been so helpful and encouraging. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with some final thoughts and resources for our listeners who are on their own journeys through grief. We're back on Life Unfiltered. We've been talking about grief and how it's different for everyone.
It's been deep, that's for sure. And I hope anyone listening who's been through loss is feeling like, hey, it's okay to feel this way. There's hope.
Me too. Something people forget about with grief is that it's okay to feel joy, too. To laugh, to have those lighter moments, even when you're hurting.
So important. It's not like grief turns off all your other emotions. You don't have to live in sadness forever.
Exactly. Life after loss is still full of all kinds of feelings, ups and downs, happiness and sadness all mixed together. And letting yourself feel it all is part of healing.
Couldn't have said it better. It's about embracing the messiness of grief, how unpredictable it is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
If I could tell anyone going through grief one thing, it'd be this. Be kind to yourself. There's no rush, no right way to do this.
It's a journey, and it goes at its own pace. There are going to be ups and downs, moments of despair, but also moments of peace.
Yeah. As you go through it, listen to your needs, reach out when you need to, and be proud of yourself for every little step you take.
It's about knowing that healing takes time, that there will be setbacks, and that asking for help is okay.
And never forget, you're not alone in this. There are so many people out there who've been through loss who understand.
To everyone out there who's grieving, we see you, we hear you, and we're with you. May you find strength in being vulnerable, healing and connecting with others, and hope in knowing that even in the darkest times, love and resilience are still there.
Thanks for being with us on this journey. We hope you find peace as you go through your own experience with grief.
And remember, Life Unfiltered is always here to offer support as you navigate all of life's twists and turns.